We have an amazing guest today. His name is Jack Marchetti. Italian?
A little bit, yeah.
Marchetti. Hey, Jack Marchetti. Oh, there's our guest today. You're kind of like a magical unicorn of tech, creativity, business, and you're in the film and video industry as well.
Yep.
So just kind of give our listeners an intro about what you do.
I'm Jack Marchetti. So my day job, I am a senior solutions architect at Amazon Web Services, commonly known as AWS, where I help customers build highly available, scalable, resilient architectures to achieve their business outcomes. When I'm not doing that, I am a professional screenwriter, so I found a niche in Christmas movies. One of them coming out, depending on when you hear this, it comes out December 12th on Ion TV.
So, by the way, for our followers and people listening in, Jack is blind.
Yes.
Jack is blind. He's doing all of this blind. So any excuse that you want to make and give yourself, like, I just can't. This is difficult. Like me too. I was just bitching about something earlier, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? What the fuck is the deal? So you write Christmas movies.
Correct.
Which is something that just blows my fucking mind. It blows me out of the water. It's one of those dealios, like on a first date. I'm like, if we're gonna watch rom-coms and like you haven't been beside me multiple times yet, it's definitely a hard, like, I don't know, I'm running out your window, I'm jumping out. But like, you also, like me, like, you love dark shorts too, which the psychotic person in me or the in love person in me can definitely see like the flip side of how I would probably be awesome at both of those things too. Like, you know, the super, I'm very extremist in so many things. I'm very all or nothing. I've told myself it's a daily practice to be like, you can, you know, it's not all or nothing.
Yep.
But I'm still that way. And even in leadership and stuff too, I like to think like maybe not so extremist, but it's like, hey, there's colors of gray in between. I can see everything, you know, but I like to stay on a course to keep myself organized. And you write.
Yep.
Do you find like a sweet relief in switching at all sometimes? Do you, if you're stuck on like a short that's, you know, a darker, more introspective piece and you go straight to like goo holiday lovey-dovey, or is it hard to get into, or vice versa?
I guess the best way I can answer that is, so a couple years ago, I got hired to write like back-to-back holiday movies. So I got to write Christmas Cupid's Arrow, New Year's Kiss, and then All I Need for Christmas.
Okay.
In order, right?
Yeah.
And then I reacted to that by writing a short film about a baseball fan who gets raped by his favorite baseball player.
Love it. I love it.
Right? And it was an idea I had in my head for a while, and it was, you know, we're in Chicago,
Baseball's huge.
Baseball's huge. So initially it started off as a hockey thing, but I figured more people like baseball than hockey, so I just put it as baseball.
Yeah.
But it was a reaction to the way fans were talking about Patrick Kane's rape allegation. And this was like 5 years ago, something like that,
Yeah.
right? And what happened was someone called into a radio show and they're like, you know, this girl went to his house at, I don't know, like 3 a.m. Like, what the fuck was she doing there, thinking she was going to play Xbox? And I remember thinking, like, well, what if I went to Patrick Kane's house and I wanted to play Xbox, right?
Yeah.
Or something, like, and he came on to me. And it's one of those, like, I was like, well, men would never even, like, would never, like, the threat of sexual violence is never really a thing that we think about.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in a relatively, I wouldn't say a bad area, but, you know, the threat of being jumped and stuff like that, but I never thought like walking down an alley, someone was going to pull me behind a dumpster and
pull down your
fuck
pants,
me, right? So I was like, that would be an interesting twist on the whole thing, where like we have these two people show up at this guy's house, and the entire audience the entire time is likely going to think the girl is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
But the entire time, like, there's little things here or there that's like, oh shit, the guy's in jeopardy this whole fucking time, and he's so oblivious to it, and so and it was also like a take on like celebrity worship and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
So that was my reaction to writing G-rated,
God,
very
it's so
happy,
good,
right? Very
it's
happy
such a good
stuff,
twist.
right?
It's my best interpretation of if I wanted to real life, you have to really see through the eyes of the character. You have to really be. It's always the Reservoir Dogs coaching that comes in mind.
Right.
It's a commode story. It's a scene, man. Memorize it. Now the things you gotta remember are the details. It's the details that sell your story.
As soon as I hear that, it's like, no, you need to know if like someone took a shit in that bathroom. You need to know, like,
some nasty motherfucker sprayed
Sprayed
diarrhea
diarrhea
all over the
yeah. And like that is truly. So do you collect where is a good place to go if you're feeling writer's block? Like, do you go and read blogs? Do you read? I hear a lot of screenwriters and TV people read news headlines, and they make a habit to read the headlines of the news every day, whether they like it or not, just to see how things are being communicated to the media. Do you like radio shows? That's interesting. Just kind of listen. Do you collect them? Do you subconsciously?
So I've never really had writer's block. The only time I've ever like sat in front of my computer and just couldn't write was the first time I got paid. So we got hired. We got in touch with a network. We went over like the story idea. We had to write a treatment. So a treatment is like an outline.
Yeah.
It was 9 pages long. Here's the entire movie. Like, a network's not going to let you just go like, hey, here's some money, go write. We hope you do well, right? You have to like get everything figured out ahead of time, and then they give you like a month to do a draft, right? And so I had the story was done, right? The hard part is done. Now I just put it into a screenplay format and write some catchy fucking dialogue, which is, I could do that in my sleep. And I sat in front of so I use a program called Fade In.
Yeah, never heard of it.
It's awesome. Everyone should use Fade In. It's way better than Final Draft. Final Draft can, I won't speak ill of Final Draft, but whatever. Fade In is the much better program. And I sat there, and every screenplay starts with Fade In, and the first scene was like these two characters. It was like a Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm like, interior family room night, and that was it. Nothing. Absolute fucking nothing. And I'm like looking at the notes, and I'm like, all right, like here, she talks about like being published, and her sister then, her sister's having a baby, and like everyone's super happy about that. And that was kind of like, so I don't have any kids. My brother has 2 kids, and you soon realize that like, mom cares a little bit more about the grandkids than like, the little stupid things that I do, right?
Yeah.
I still love you, Mom, but it's true, right? And so like, there's this thing where like
she gets to reparent,
right? What I mean? Yeah, and so like the main character was supposed to be like, oh, I did this all cool thing, but then like they mentioned her sister's like, oh, I'm having kids. Or I'm pregnant, and it was like, oh, holy hell, right? Mm-hmm. So I had it all there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I can't write. Like, I'm sitting there, and it's never happened to me before where I just couldn't, like, nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I know a lot of people talk about writer's block where you write stuff and it's just trash.
Yeah.
Like, I do that all the fucking time. I don't consider that writer's block. That's writing.
Yeah.
I think Lin-Manuel, the guy who did Hamilton, talked about writing is like, you turn on the faucet, and let's say it's an old faucet that hasn't, like, done anything for a while, like the fucking nasty water
shit's just
out,
spraying,
before you know it, the clean water comes out.
So
like,
true.
That's writing. Like, you got to write the bad to get to the good.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people struggle with writing, and it's like talking about perfectionism, right? Like, like, do you really think fucking Tarantino sat down one day and wrote Pulp Fiction exactly as it turned out? No, like, no, not even fucking close, right? And so that's how I've always viewed it as. Like, I don't romanticize the process at all. I think a lot of writers end up doing that, and I think that'll fuck you up. Do you have like a writing ritual, right? Like, do you do it to where you're like, okay, you know what, I've put this in a routine now, like I'm gonna like do you do it in the morning, do you do it in the evening, afternoon, or whatnot? I'll tell you mine once I hear. Not really. I know, like, some writers, like, you can't, especially when someone's paying you under deadline, you can't like be like, oh, I want to wait for it to be inspired. Like, the check cleared, you're inspired, motherfucker, right? Which I think is one thing that separates like a professional writer from like someone who just wants to write. Yeah, like, they're paying you because you can you don't need to be inspired. You sit down and write, because like at the end of the day, like, what helps me too is like for the stuff I'm like, for Christmas movies, right? Yeah. They're great and all, but it's like, it's not my like passion thing that I'm going to be like super particular about, right? So I'm able to disassociate from like what's being written on the page. And so far as like, I treat it as like someone hired me to paint their house. Yeah. Right. I paint it. Like, you may not like the color that they want, but that's what they wanted. Right. And like, as the writer as well, like, you're also paying me to like, if they come up with bad ideas, which producers give like some of the worst ideas you'll ever get.
Puppy monkey baby. Puppy monkey baby.
But it's like, that's what they wanted. Right? I'm not here to tell, like, you're paying me.
Yeah, they're like, we need your skill set.
Yeah, like, I'm not here to, debate on whether your choice was good or not. Like, I will tell you, like, I think it's you're paying me as well to be like, dude, that's a dumb idea. Yeah. Like, for instance, on this one Christmas movie that's airing in a couple weeks, it was a French distributor who was who was fronting most of the money to make the films. Anyone who's watched a Christmas movie, like the male interest is always a widower. Right? You make him a widower because it's a way to make the very attractive 40-something-year-old guy with a daughter or a kid or a cute dog available. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like otherwise, it's like, wait,
he's a divorcee.
Yeah, like
what's wrong with him?
Why is this perfect human being with these like rock solid abs single?
You're like,
right?
there's definitely something fucked up with that guy.
Right.
But you're like, oh my God, no, he had his love and he's committed.
Right. His
That's
wife died.
fucking brilliant.
It's so sad, right? And so that's what you do. Like that's what
the
you
move.
fucking do. And they were like, we want him to be divorced. And I'm like, that's fine, but like for the most part, like American audiences, like there's the thing around divorce potentially. Do you really want that? And like, all right, instead of divorce, she's just gone.
She took
I'm like,
off.
cool. Like, where did she go?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't know. I'm like, do you want me to come up with I come up with some interesting shit while she's gone? You know, I've watched Dateline a lot.
Dateline. I have friends' stories to color that too. You know what I mean? It's just like, because like there might be a trickling in later down the line wherever the hell the screenplay goes. With mom coming back through. But
right. And I'm like,
sometimes
and they're like, well, no one's gonna care. I'm like, if you mention it, someone's gonna care.
someone's gonna ask.
And like the minute you pull that thread,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the wife's gone. Like the minute you say that, right? If I'm watching if I'm watching the film I'm writing and I write in here his wife left,
Why?
I am going to assume in the third act somewhere, because this is where we talking, kind of get into inside baseball kind of stuff like setups and payoffs.
Yep.
Right. All you're doing throughout an entire story is setups and payoffs. And if you ever want like a master class on setups and payoffs, just watch Shawshank Redemption. The entire fucking film is just set it up, pay it off, set it up, pay it off. Right. And so if you set something up without paying it off, the audience is going to be mad at you.
Yep.
Now, granted, at the end of the day, it's a Christmas movie. As someone once told me, who was a producer, he's like, dude, it is a Christmas movie that's going to air opposite of like a college football game somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Don't get too
Wrapped
well,
up.
and
You want it to be good though.
And it's my whole thing
Yeah.
is like,
If you're gonna spend time in it,
Right.
you also want it to be like, well, I didn't just devote time regardless of if it's colored with my shit or not. That's where I get hard time too. I'm like, I don't want to make a complete piece of shit, right?
Yeah,
So
and-
that's why I give advice to.
back to your, and I'll ask you about your ritual because I was like kind of fucking talking. But I don't really have a ritual. So I used to be like a heavy fucking smoker, right? 3 packs a day. Convinced myself like there's no way I'll ever be able to write or do anything without smoking a cigarette, right? And when I was a smoker, I wrote one feature-length screenplay in like 8 years, right? And then since I quit, I've written a ton more and been paid to do it, right? So there was that. Like I had this whole, I needed the ashtray here. I had to have my fucking coffee here. Now, I mean, it's just like, not necessarily a ritual when I'm writing. Like I write whenever sit in front, like cool, I'm bored, I want to go write, I'll just go do it. Especially if I'm under deadline, I can't think about anything else but that, and that's like front of mind the entire time.
Yeah.
And so like it's just
Who's paid? My thing too as well, when I have a lot of clients, I'm like, all right, who are the 80-20? Like, who's my 20?
Right.
Who's my 80? What's my deadline? How do we get it done? Because you always get it done at the end of the day. I mean, my whole deal is like, I think I did a podcast about this before. I feel like this sounds familiar. Me saying it's going to take as long as it is the deadline.
Yeah.
And whatever deadline you set for yourself for this or that, like it'll take as long as it's deadline to knock it out.
right. And so, but like I'd say the only, and I think I borrowed this from fucking Aaron Sorkin when he talked about when he would get stuck writing The Social Network. He would just go take a shower.
Ooh.
And so, and he said it was like metaphorically ripping the page out of the typewriter and fucking throwing it out. So it was almost like a way of resetting.
Yeah.
Right. And so I talk about romanticizing the fucking process, but like this is me romanticizing the process. There's something about the blank page that is just incredibly like, you freak the fuck out. Right.
Yeah.
Like, how will I ever, especially like day one when you start writing, there's nothing. And
It's
in
empty.
like a month, I need to have like 110 pages that someone can film.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, and you're the bottleneck, right? Like they got the camera people, they got the actors lined up. They usually sign people, especially in the areas I'm in, like people like sign on, just, they don't need to read the script. Right? They're like, are you going to pay me X and you need me for 5 days? Cool.
And I look good. I just got done doing a Crest Widened commercial, and I am now your real estate agent of love.
And so,
you know what I heard is Hemingway. I think it's either Hemingway or it's one of those classics. I can't remember it, but it's definitely a classic writer. I just heard this. They would always start in the middle. And it's like a French terminology that they would use about it. And they would stop, like with going into mid-sentence, or stop in a place where they know that when they could pick it back up, they could pick up the baton and the action running into it.
yeah, I mean,
Which is hard sometimes. Sometimes you have to concept the story out and get it all through. But
yeah, I mean, so some writers will, no, it depends. Like if you're being paid, you usually have to do an outline. You just have, like they're not going to fucking go off and, but like if you're Aaron Sorkin, like dude, whatever, you know. So it depends on it depends on, especially if you're writing on spec, meaning like no one's paid you and you're just doing this on the hopes of putting it in the spec market and selling it or something like that. But if you haven't like thought about where the thing's going, right? Like I usually start at the end, write the ending first.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know where you're going, you're never gonna fucking get there. And I have a million like started working on script because had cool opening scene without like knowing like, because you need, I mean, at the end of the day, like what's a fucking film? It's like a character started here, they ended up here, they overcame some obstacles, learned something along the way.
Yeah.
Right. And throughout something was entertaining.
Yep.
Right. If you don't know, like it's super easy to like, I can do a first act, like there's no tomorrow. Give me, fuck, I'll just go write one right now. 25 pages, like first act, I set the whole thing up.
Like,
It's that fucking page 30 to 90, that 60 pages, that hour in the middle.
that makes the most transformative of it all. Like, right, like the.
Well, I mean, that's like where the movie actually happens, right? That like we've left the Shire and shit happens before we like, you know, destroy the ring. So like all of that is the movie. But that's like the hardest part. Like you'll know, and another thing I've realize as well is like you notice a lot of movies like they start out really well and they kind of lose it a little bit and then sometimes end poorly.
Yeah.
And I could just almost see the writer like got super excited and like I got this awesome setup and I'm fucking tired as I'm writing in the middle, and then by the end it's just like I just want to end.
Can this just be over
and go
please?
home? And the reason is like, well, because you're doing it linearly. Like how about if you started at the end? Like how badass would that be if you just wrote the fucking ending first? And all your passion and energy and creativity were all there, right? And I write with my brother a lot, so we usually, actually lied before when I said I hadn't written anything dark since then. I wrote a horror movie, right, last year.
What was the name?
What's up?
What was the name of it?
Oh, York Witches Society.
Yeah,
right?
you showed me a trailer for that. That was
and
cool.
so, like when we were writing that, and we were under a crazy like strict deadline for that as well. I would tell him, so he like his vision's like worse than mine. So
really, both in the family.
Yeah. Thanks, Mom. It's hereditary.
Man, I'm worried. My dad's had those big old glasses too as well. So I see mine fleeting sometimes. I'm like, oh God. It's cool that you guys work on it together, you and the brother.
And so like I'll tell him like, hey dude, go write. He writes in, so he doesn't use the software. He writes in like Notepad, but there's a syntax called Fountain, I believe. Okay. So you can put it, it's almost like it's the closest I'll ever become to being a software engineer. Like, it's like a syntax or whatever, you write around things, and then I can import that into my screenwriting software, and like where his dialogue's supposed to be, it'll show up his dialogue and shit like that, right? So I'll just go tell him like, dude, like you're not gonna be able to manage the actual like draft that we're doing. Like let me do that because I can see better, but go off and like, dude, like we need a scene where like, I don't know, one of the characters like is hanging from a tree, and then there's this car alarm that just keeps going off, right?
Yeah, see like the visual, like when the character is looking around, like what the shit they're seeing, you know? Just kind of putting it in.
And like we need them all to like run out of the cabin, and like this is going on, and they got to go somewhere. I don't know where the fuck they're going, but like, dude, go do that, right? While we're like 40 pages away from actually getting there.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a trick that I think people don't realize that they can do. Is like you don't have to write. And I got that sort of from John August. John August wrote a bunch of Tim Burton movies.
Okay.
And he has a podcast called Script Notes. So if you're into...
Oh, I was just going to recommend that. Like, that's great. Isn't he with somebody... They've done...
Craig Mazin, the guy who did Chernobyl.
Yeah.
So that's... that I like never dawned on me either that like, oh shit, like you can just write out of order.
Well, the thing is with the back end part, you think we apply it to so many things, and all the straight-laced individuals, like they do that with their business plan. It's like, what's your 10-year plan, right? So it's like, why wouldn't we, for a story, so that way you can just kind of shoot for that target, go there. Because the beginning part, I feel your pain. Mine is more like just sprayed creativity throughout, especially with music videos, because then you just like, I don't know, I feel so deeply with music and I just can't turn off the feel. So I'm like, yeah, it's a badass scene, like the exploding car, and you're just like fucking in it. I'm up on the second level of the viaduct, and I'm like, you know, like tied in mic cable, it's crazy. And then you're like, well, what the fuck is happening now? Like, what the fuck, where the fuck is like the smart part of it, you know? Yeah. So like, you're like, well, she, you know, like I had a lot of feel before. I was going through a little bit of a relationship thing, so that was great. Taylor Swifted the shit out of my career for this last year, so.
So you mentioned a process,
So because I'm not as much of a screenwriter, right? So I didn't like, that's not like my forte. I do a lot of directing and producing, but like I'll wake up and what I was doing is I was writing, right? Meditating or vice versa, immediately meditate.
Yeah.
Try not to fall asleep, right? Yeah, like in bed, I'm straight up. I have like shit queued up, yoga nidra, like 10 minutes. Cool, body scan, wake up with energy, right, 10 minutes, and then, you know, allow myself to get lost in that for an extra 20, you know, minutes if I'm into it, because it's not a natural for me, so I'm like, oh, I'm feeling it. It will reset and do something to you spiritually, or I don't know, something in our brains to really be able to produce quality work. And I would work out immediately, which is because it's setting the tone to your day. And then it sucks though, because unless you wake up at 5 a.m, you start your day at 11.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. But I notice I can sit and I can edit longer. And I'm not like, oh, I'm going to punch my shitty TV computer screen in the face. Like I just can't take it. And with some of these gigs and some of these things that were happening, I was getting booked like super early in the morning. It'll set you off. So I was swapping workout at night. Not my favorite, because like even though I don't like working out in the morning, there's something about like beating the shit out of yourself like the first thing in the day, like my body being able to just like be in like loosen up, getting a schedule. If anything with this podcast will be hopefully like my fucking, it's my goal in life to be able to obtain a schedule that makes me happy and feel like I'm getting enough. I can't help myself. I'm like the fat kid with cake. I'm like, I just like want all of it all the time, all in, and it's just crazy. So, but I didn't realize like, you know, strengthening the concept and like what it means is more important. And as long as you just show up, like you're gonna get results. And there's one thing, it's a proverb, but it's like, don't be a donkey. I think it was the guy who was a creator of CD Baby that said this.
Don't be a donkey?
Yeah, so there's a proverb of a donkey that's sitting there in between two, like the hay and the water. And it's like, it doesn't know what the fuck to do. It's like, I'm so hungry. I'm so thirsty. I'm so hungry. I'm so thirsty. So then it just falls over and dies. Because it's just like, it wants to do it all at the same time. So instead of committing itself to being like, you know what, like I'm going to go all in on this, you know, for a couple of years, and like you can have multiple careers. I also heard a woman who she's like, every 10 years she switches up her career just to keep it entirely fresh. I was like, that's cool. Because doing all of the things right now, I think giving myself like a grace pass has felt good. I always want to be like, oh, I'm a bad writer. I'm actually a fucking excellent writer. So I like to stop like, you know, capping myself at saying like, oh, I can't anymore. Yeah. It's just like, hasn't been a part of my reality as much. Honestly, I sounded like a purchased Russian bride not too many years ago. My was terrible. I'm like, a spell check, even when I do voice to text, I'm like, what is that? That's inappropriate and it's gibberish.